Hey everybody, I am your host a lot, and today I am reporting to you from Washington Square Park in New York City at the Elizabeth Warren rally. Let's go talk to some folks, see what's going on. It feels like we're exceedingly progressive nowadays in the modern day Democrat Party. Do you think Elizabeth Warren is progressive enough? Because I know we have the rise of like democratic socialism. I know she doesn't consider herself one. But what do you think about that? Is she going to be able to garner enough votes and win out in the primary, or is it too progressive is really the question?
Well, I mean, she comes from a more conservative background than most of the candidates and has come to a progressive stance through an accumulation of facts and analysis about things like the economy. So I think she can speak to a broad range of voters, and I think that would be a huge asset to her in the general election.
One of the things that I know she also talks about is reducing spending in the military. However, when given the opportunity to in 2017, she voted to increase military spending. Do you have any qualms on that, or that whether or not she will do what she says she will?
I don't know the specifics about that. I mean, I know that she wants to bring in some of our external military commitments, and I think that that would naturally reduce the amount of money the military needs. I think maybe there was a difference between like needs before, and once you reduce those, the budgets naturally go down. Yeah. But I don't know the specifics again.
I had one last question, and I know some people disagree with the comparison with Elizabeth Warren to Hillary, but this kind of feels like 2016 all over again. Will she be able to get Bernie votes without them going to Trump? And like without having Bernie fans really sour on the Democrat Party? It feels like that happened last time.
If you are so committed to a single candidate that you're willing to vote for Donald Trump, I don't even understand your prerogative, so I can't speak to that.
Are you going to vote for the nominee regardless of who it is? Like even a Joe Biden, Bernie?
Who knows what's going to happen in the next year, but probably more likely than not.
Yeah. And the one controversy really swirling around Warren is the Native American background stuff. When she was a teacher at Harvard, they had her listed as a Native American. Do you have any problems with that or her identifying with that? She came out with the DNA test, less than 1% like Native American.
Those kind of GWAS studies are like not really that accurate. So I don't know about using that or like how accurate the like 1% thing is. I think in general, those things are not reliable just because of the way the statistical analysis are done. But that's like a different question, I guess. I think
because as I understand, she's not Native American, but she I don't know how much it benefited her, and there are questions about how much it benefited her.
Native presidential forum that she went to, and she apologized for that incident, and I think she's made inroads into reconciling that with that community, and I feel like ultimately it's more up to them than to me on whether or not that is like still problematic.
Not to mention a small voting bloc, so that's not going to drown her from that side.
I mean, that's not to say that those issues aren't important, though.
Sure, yeah. Do you think, last question, do you think she'd be the best candidate to beat Trump amongst the Dems?
Absolutely. Like, she would talk him under the table in the debates. Like, she's such a good candidate, and she is so well informed on all the issues, she would make him look like an idiot.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to mention?
That's it. Vote Warren.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you. This recent Democrat debate, Joe Biden was attacking Elizabeth Warren on our ideas for like free college and Medicare for all, saying it wasn't affordable. I think he almost sounded like a Republican up there. So I don't know where it's missing matching kind of into the Democratic Party. And is everybody going to get behind the eventual nominee? Because I'm not sure that happened in 2016. It feels like a lot of Bernie bros soured on Hillary. And I don't know. I think Elizabeth Warren seems a little bit like Hillary Clinton. I know she's talking to Hillary Clinton a little bit. How can we avoid the same thing that happened there, kind of in the same iteration with Elizabeth Warren kind of being Hillary Clinton 2.0? And if you don't think that she is, you could. That's fair too.
Yeah, I clearly don't think that she is. Although I had spent a little bit of time with Hillary during that campaign, I felt differently about her than the general populace. But I think Elizabeth is more warm. I think she's a better storyteller. And the most important factor is Trump. He will energize and mobilize so many more minority and millennial voters that the cities like, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and
if he didn't do it
Detroit,
in 2016, though, how is he going to do it this time?
Who going to do what?
No, like if Trump was still able to not conjure up all the immigrant votes and minority vote in 2016, how are they going to do it against him?
My point is, Hillary didn't excite those people.
Oh, okay. So you think an Elizabeth Warren type would?
At this point, it's irrelevant. At this point, Trump has got people so excited.
Yeah, so before the 2016 election, you don't think Trump had him excited? The way he talked about people south of the border, even then, because the Muslim ban and that was
thought it was a joke. It was a done deal. We all read the polls. It was a joke.
Yeah. People still feel like they're in shock about Trump winning.
Of course, which is why everyone's going to be out and voting.
We'll see. My one last question is going to be the most controversial thing about Elizabeth Warren. When she was a professor at Harvard, they had her listed as a Native American. As I understand, her mom told her she was Native American. She took a DNA test. She isn't. How do you feel about that gaffe? If you see it as one, is it bad that she identified as a Native American when she wasn't? You know, there are potential benefits with being a minority in America. What do you think about that whole situation? Trump's naming her Pocahontas.
I think it's a non-issue. It's more evidence of Trump grabbing a hold of things that are divisive.
Okay.
And obviously race relations, particularly relations with Native Americans, is very divisive in this country. And it was very embarrassing when he had Native Americans in the White House, in the Oval Office, to honor them, and all he could talk about was the Pocahontas issue. And I don't. To me, it's a non-issue, and I don't think at the end of the day it's going to have resonance with voters.
Sure. But for as far as identifying as a minority when you're not one, do you think that's an issue at all?
Well, she was under the impression that she was, number one, and number two, she is genetically still somewhat Native American.
I think like 1/64th as
Whatever
much
it
as,
is,
or
yeah.
1/1000th though.
Yeah,
But so
yeah.
I don't know, because it feels like we also have people like Rachel Dolezal identifying as things that they're not, or Sean King.
Not the same. This is not the same.
Okay, absolutely. Just in conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you saying that too. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. I think you're good.
Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the episode, and if so, please like, subscribe right now down below, and enjoy the rest of the show. Amen. So Elizabeth Warren is relatively progressive nowadays. How can she stand out in a field of a ton of different progressives, especially with somebody even more progressive than her, Bernie Sanders? So why aren't you a Bernie Sanders per se? What made you pick Warren?
Yeah, so personally, I worked for President Obama, in the administration. I worked on the ground as an organizer. My main motto in life, it's to empower and include. So I believe in middle-class economics, and President Warren, unlike Bernie, has delineated very, very specific plans on how to get people in the middle class to work and how to infuse money and resources for folks like myself who just graduated from school, and we are drowning in student loans. And we need that leadership to be able to infuse that money into people like me, so I can be able to afford a house, and get married and have a life. Like people from my grandparents' generation were able to do it,
I wanted to follow up with you. The last rally I attended at this park was an Andrew Yang rally about 6 or 7 months ago.
Right.
Andrew Yang constantly talks about how automation is going to automate millions upon millions of jobs away. He's the only candidate amongst the Democrats or Republicans who's talked about automation. He proposed $1,000 a month of UBI. I'm not asking you specifically about UBI, but no other candidates talking about automation. Is that something you fear? Do you want to hear more candidates talk about that?
It's a really good question. You can take it from the policy perspective, or you can approach it from more of like an ideology perspective, right? So if you think of ideology, some people will not agree with giving people free money, right? Universal basic income, you believe in competition, you believe in getting people to work. If you look at it from a political perspective, policy perspective, there's this aspect of how do we get Americans to invest in what they're passionate about and not necessarily working 8 hours a day. So that's why Yang seems pretty interesting for people. My issue with Yang, I think he lacks the experience, the gravitas, and the government experience to run the country.
Just on that point, it feels like most of the reason why Donald Trump won was because he was an outsider. So Elizabeth Warren, she's a bureaucrat. She's an elitist. She is a former Harvard professor. She is somebody who's been in the Senate for a long time. So we're going to throw up a bureaucrat essentially against Donald Trump, and it feels like that's why Donald Trump won. So do you like more of the outsider angle, or
that's your opinion? I would say the opposite. I would say that Elizabeth Warren is from the ground up, right? Her daddy was a janitor. She comes from her bootstraps, right? From the like middle class, lower middle class.
But she's been a senator for a long time, and then she's also been a professor at one of the most prestigious schools, which sounds very elitist to the average.
Which speaks volumes to all the young women in America, all the little girls who are looking up to her and say, hey, I can do it too. I can be president. I can run for president, etc. But on your point on the elitism, right? What I find most ironic is how people see Donald Trump as a man of the people or an outsider when the man has been running real estate and in a very shady way in New York City. By the way, he's, mad corrupt, and he's got a bunch of situations with the Southern District of New York that we're going to find out later. The only reason why this man is not in prison is because he's a sitting president and there's a memo in the Justice Department that says he can't be indicted. That's the only reason. But rest assured, if this man wasn't a sitting president, he would be charged already.
Sure. I know as recently as yesterday, Elizabeth Warren was calling for the impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh for new allegations that came up. Brett Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court justice that Trump appointed. Do you think that we should be pursuing the impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh? And do you think there's enough evidence based on these reports already to be calling for that? Or do you think we're getting a little bit trigger happy with just saying impeach Trump, impeach Kavanaugh, impeach what have you?
I think that's a great question. So how would I approach the Brett Kavanaugh situation? Process. There's a process for a reason,
appreciate that.
which is the reason why
But then she already called for impeachment before the process was done. So does that give you any hesitations?
There was a reason why she did that, right? So let's look at what the FBI did, and it just came out today and yesterday, right? They didn't investigate what they were supposed to investigate. They run a sham investigation. I'm not blaming.
But to give
them,
credit to these
but it
accusations,
was
the person who supposedly it happened to said that didn't come forth and wasn't the one who
there are
brought
many,
up the
there are
allegation.
many accusers, right? You may be referring to one of them. I'm
The
thinking,
most recent, but
yeah. So there are many. That's why process exists, and that's why we need to like maintain that process. And in Kavanaugh's case, we see now with evidence, right, ex post facto, we see how they did not follow process, and we appointed a judge who perjured himself, who lied under oath, and that is something that the American people cannot allow.
As far as due process goes, you are a big supporter of due process in the U.S., correct?
Absolutely.
I had one last question. I know they've been tough, but Elizabeth Warren constantly talks about how we need to reduce military spending. However, given the opportunity in 2017, when she had the opportunity to vote on increasing the budget, she voted yes. Do you have any qualms with that? Is that a big issue for you?
Well, senators vote on different issues all the time, and there are a myriad of policy issues that you and I don't even know about, right? It may
a
be
bunch of things get tacked onto the bills.
It may be exactly. There are poison pills that one little thing in a huge bill. So that's a great point. But another issue is they're accountable to say their states. So if her state needs a new Navy shipyard, and she thinks that's going to create jobs, she's going to vote in a certain way that may not make sense, ideologically in another issue.
I mean, respectfully, isn't that a cop-out, though? Because she says she wants to reduce spending for the military. I mean, and then I understand there are other things that goes on with it, but at the end of the day, she's still voting to increase it.
It depends on how you approach it. I agree that some things may not all
Because that's
align
something like
themselves.
not Bernie Sanders does. Bernie Sanders sticks to his guns on his principles.
Here's the
for it.
thing that I appreciate about Bernie, that he's been saying the same thing for a long time. Here's the thing that I think Bernie can improve on, right? Listening to people of color like myself, women, he's had a huge misogyny issue. He's had a huge, women
I'm
issue.
glad you
people
brought
of color
that up
issue.
because people don't talk about the issues in his campaign
Yeah.
about sexual harassment.
And you know what? We need to thank Bernie in many ways for bringing the conversation of Medicare for all and to the big platform of
forefront.
America, to the forefront. And that is something that many of us are thankful for. What I think Bernie can improve on, and what I think we can bring the American people up to speed, is how he positions himself on issues like Venezuela. I mean, a Latin American person like myself, if you don't call Maduro a dictator, if you don't call Chavez a dictator, it's a big issue.
Yeah. And a lot of the left and more progressives are more okay with that for whatever political alignment reasons. So does that give you any qualms? The AOCs nowadays in New York City, does that give you any trouble?
It's incredibly challenging. So put a perfect example. I'm from Miami, Florida, right? So the way we see things in South Florida may be completely different from the way they see things in the Bronx.
Absolutely.
So maybe AOC.
Che Guevara is no hero in Miami,
Exactly.
but Che Guevara here pretty much is.
I mean, you saw what happened to de Blasio, right?
Yeah.
Huge fluke, right? So that is part of the reason why I think we need to think of politics as local. Local politics,
I agree with you
politics is local, right? So what may apply in El Bronx may not apply in South Florida, and we need to be mindful of that.
So you have a couple of signs that it's trying to promote the number you text. Your sign over here says, dream big, work hard. Work is spelled with an E on purpose, I hope, and that isn't just a spelling mistake. I'm convinced that. And what's the other side say? I'm a Warren fan. So could you tell me a little
Literally.
bit? Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here, what it means for you to be out here?
Yeah. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is the candidate that I believe in because I just believe in everything that she believes in, and very early on in the campaign race, early in this year, I started looking at the candidates that were running, and there was sort of like no other candidate for me. I was quickly sort of drawn into her campaign, not just because of obviously how intelligent and smart and well-spoken she is, but also there's an aspect of kindness and compassion that she exudes, and the way she speaks to people and she speaks to us and listens to her constituents, that I feel like is missing from a lot of candidates, if not most. So that's definitely been one of the reasons why I'm definitely all in with Warren, and we need more positive vibes.
I wanted to ask you, it seems like we're seeing a lot more progressives in the modern day Democrat Party than we used to see before this. Elizabeth Warren doesn't identify as a democratic socialist. Bernie Sanders does. Do you think that could potentially be an issue with creating a rift? Do you think she's progressive enough for our modern day Democrats?
I think she is, yeah. I think it's, she speaks, she has her platform, she has her plans, and that's been sort of like the strategy. People will either follow her and listen and read up on her plans, or they won't. But I think they will. I think people need a candidate like Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
We need somebody like that.
Yeah. I also know that she constantly talks about how she wants to reduce the amount of spending on our military. She talks about how there's a problem with the military-industrial complex. But when she had an opportunity to vote on it in 2017, she decided to vote to increase spending. Do you have any quarrels with that, or do you think that's like kind of a non-issue?
No comment on that one, really. Yeah.
Sure. And also, I know there's a lot of Democrats running with a lot of different qualifications. Do you think she's the best one to beat Trump, though she has the best chance amongst all of the Democrats to beat Trump?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And one thing, she's drawing a lot of connections to Hillary Clinton. People are comparing her to Hillary Clinton, and there have been talks about her speaking to Hillary Clinton in the background a little bit, seeking some guidance. A lot of people in the Democrats, it feels like Hillary's toxic to some degree. Do you have any problems with her communicating or seeking guidance from Hillary?
I'm just here to support Elizabeth Warren. I don't speculate or read those views, so sorry, can't answer that. Yeah.
In conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, that's it. Just go to community.elizabethwarren.com and join the fight. If you really want things to change, you have to fight for them.
Thank you so much for your time, bro. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I want to do one because it's hard to You guys want to rock, paper, scissors? Rock, paper, scissors. That was the latest loss. Oh my god. That was two of the latest losses I've ever seen. You're so delayed in loss book. All right, so let's jump into it. Yeah, it's fine. You can hold the sign. The sign will look cool. Yeah. So we are out here today in New York City at the park for this Elizabeth Warren rally. You're holding the sign. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here and what differentiates her from the rest of the Democrats?
So I think there's a lot of things that differentiate her. One, the thing is that her focus is in policy. I did a master's in public administration. I think having plans and thinking about these issues that we're all passionate about, like every single candidate is talking about the same issues: healthcare, immigration, climate change. But I think Elizabeth Warren is thinking about it more critically in a way that would reflect how she will govern. That's one thing. The other thing is I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I was born in the island, and my family's still in the island. And after Hurricane Maria destroyed Puerto Rico, I saw the need to get more involved in American politics because Puerto Rican voices are being forgotten. All the abuses that Trump has done to our island.
It's tried forever to be a state. It doesn't seem like any of that's ever going to go through.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is having a candidate that knows about Puerto Rico, because Elizabeth Warren has been talking about Puerto Rico since before she ran for president. She's been talking about the abuses of Wall Street and how Puerto Rico has been forced to do austerity. And now she has a bunch of plans for pardoning debt. I got to talk with her in New Hampshire briefly.
Oh, like face to face? You actually? Okay,
I got like 30 seconds, but I told her, look, we need a referendum for decolonization of Puerto Rico, a referendum between statehood or independence. And she was like, yeah, we're going to do that eventually. So I think that's, speaks to her commitment to Puerto Rico and speaks to her commitment to the Latino community.
That's awesome. I had one question I wanted to follow up with you on. In the most recent debate, Joe Biden was attacking her on her Medicare for All plan and canceling college debt plan because he said it was going to be too expensive. Yeah. What do you think about that? And Democrats sounding like Republicans really saying like Medicare for all and paying for everybody's college is going to be too expensive. Do you buy that?
So I think the key is about how you plan this whole thing, because Elizabeth Warren is matching revenue to this whole plan. So she's thinking about a 2% wealth tax on every $50 million. She's planning also repealing the Trump tax cuts that would increase a lot of revenue. Yeah. And I think more importantly, her vision is about an economy that grows. She's thinking about how healthcare for everyone reduces the expenses of everyone, cost of living. She's thinking about how you can stimulate the economy by spending in climate change and renewable energy. Mm-hmm. So I think from an economic standpoint, she has thought out. Obviously, there's details to work out that was going to work out when she's president, but I see a lot of vision in how do you match revenue with expenditure.
In 2016, it felt like Hillary lost because not enough Bernie bros and progressives got behind Hillary Clinton. That's my perspective. How are we going to avoid the same thing from happening in 2020? Because people are seeing a lot of parallels between Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton. She's in contact with Hillary Clinton. I know some people don't like the comparison, but what do you think about it? Because it looks similar to what happened in 2016, and we don't want to suffer the same fate in what happened there too, right?
I share the concerns. I understand those, but I think the reality is Elizabeth Warren is completely different to Hillary Clinton. Both of them are smart women, strong women, but Elizabeth Warren has had the ability to talk about progressive causes much longer than anyone else. So her record
Bernie
is.
bros follow her. Do you
I
think?
think it's more likely. If you look at the statistics, like I think 80% of Bernie bros are willing to vote for Warren, which is huge. This is one of the many polls I've seen. This, might change, but she has a good credibility on the left. More importantly, she's someone that is also credible with the center of the party. I think she's a unifier. Right? If you think about Joe Biden on the right, Bernie on the left, she's kind of the middle ground candidate that can bring everyone together.
Yeah. I also wanted to follow up because a lot of people are talking about her like an outsider, but I don't think she's an outsider at all. She's been a Harvard professor, so kind of elite from that perspective. I know she's been a teacher and also a senator for a very long time. It feels like one of the reasons Trump won was because he was an outsider. That's what a lot of people really loved. Do you think it's bad that she's kind of running as an insider? And what do you think about the optics of that?
I think I don't think Donald Trump is an outsider. He has been a wealthy white man for his entire life. He has $1 million loan of his parents.
But it felt like it, right? The feeling. It
But I
felt
feel
like it.
Elizabeth Warren has had the capacity to captivate that. You can look at this crowd right now. People are energized. There were 200 volunteers out here today organizing for her. And more importantly, she's been talking about how we're going to fix this because Trump was running on an outsider message. He told he's going to attack corporate interests. And look at him. He passed $1 million tax cut. He's doing a bunch of corrupt stuff with his hotels. And that's not how you govern for the common people. Elizabeth Warren has plans for that. She has laid out her agenda, and she has been fighting for common people for her entire career. She has a track record, and I'd rather have that.
Yeah. One last question. This is a little bit controversial. I know that when she was a Harvard professor, they did have her listed as a Native American. Yeah. She took a DNA test that shows that she wasn't Native American. Do you think that's an issue that she identified as Native American and kind of told people that, and then it turns out that she wasn't after all?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a very controversial thing. I think what's most important and most telling about the candidate is how she's responded to that. She wasn't like, double down on her mistake. She apologized, and more importantly, she's released a plan on how to deal with Native American inequality. She's thinking about the issues. She's apologized for that, and she's also very well versed in all the issues in that community. And I think that's not something Donald Trump can say. I don't think a lot of other Democrats can say that either.
Should there be any consequences for her actions, do you think, with identifying as such, besides just a slap on the wrist and us saying that it was bad now? Because, I don't know, as we're giving more benefits to more minorities for multiple reasons, and historically, where we historically oppressed them in the past or what have you, we're giving benefits to them, and now certain white people are identifying as Native American or Black. We have Sean King, we have Rachel Dolezal. Should we seek consequences for that?
Well, I'm a Hispanic American. I think identity is an important part of American politics, but the reality is, if we're going to determine social policy just on race, it's not going to work out because of what you say.
I agree.
We need to determine it on income. The reality is that most people that are of color are lower income, and Elizabeth Warren is planning to do a policy like that. She believes in affirmative action. She believes in having historically Black colleges with more funding, but she also believes in taxing. She also believes in spending in low advantaged communities, no matter what color they look like. So that's the message she has. That's how we should be governing in America.
Just in conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
I just want to mention that people need to turn out. It doesn't matter what candidate you believe in. I believe in Elizabeth Warren. I've been telling people to turn out, but the reality is, no matter the stakes, we need to unite over whoever the Democratic candidate is and beat Donald Trump. That's what matters. Lives are at stake. The world is at stake. And it's time to set egos aside and organize and fight for what's right.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey everyone, thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode. I wanted to pose the question back to you. What did you think about the questions I was able to ask? Let me know down in the comments. If this is your first time here, guys, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you really enjoyed the content, I'll have PayPal and Patreon links in the description. You can hit those up if you want to support me. Until next time, stay barely informed. Test. All right, what do you like the most about Warren? Is Elizabeth Warren in danger of splitting the vote with Bernie Sanders?
You know what I like about it?
Test.
I'll tell you what I like about it.
In the